everybody. Happy Wednesday. Sorry for the sirens. I don't know if the microphone's picking them up or not. But we have another great stream today. I'm so glad so many of you enjoyed yesterday's stream. We really had a lot of fun. We'll have fun today as well, but I'll try to make sure it's a little more structured because we do have 3 separate stories to be discussing. Hey, Youthful Bloom. How you doing? Nice to see everybody. So the way a live stream works, for those of you who are not familiar, I'll do the first 3 stories of the day. You can ask me anything that you would like about those stories specifically while that stream is going. And then at the end of the stream, you can ask me anything that you would like. And then maybe I might not answer. You'll have to see. Oh, Miss Bubbles, I'm so glad you enjoyed the super stream. 4 a.m., you're a night owl like myself. Happy New Year to you, Alon. I hope you're having a great day. I remember you yesterday from the stream. All right, everybody. So let's get started. Again, try to keep the comments during the stream to the topic at hand. Especially, it's very hard for me to ignore a super chat. So don't put me in a difficult position, please. And I won't spoil Andor. When we get to that section, it'll be a non-spoiler Andor discussion. I just kind of want to share my latest thoughts on the show. One life to Oliver. I'm so glad you just joined as a member. That's wonderful. All right, so let's get started, everybody. We got so many good stories. It's going to be great. All right. And then I got to get going because I have a little movie to see tonight. I'm excited. Hey, James. James McAvoy. Spelled with an E, though. That's funny. All right. All right, so story number 1. Boop. Oh, sorry, Jane Fonda. I covered up Jane Fonda's face a little bit there. So Sony's having a big week. Not only do we have this new movie to talk about, Barbarella, that they're bringing back, but they picked up this GameStop movie called Dumb Money with an incredible cast. That is a really strong cast. I think that's going to be that film I think could be quite a big movie. It's about something that happened with GameStop and it's called Dumb Money, and that's the lineup. And that's an incredible lineup. My goodness. So I think that Sony was right to pick up that for sure. Now, Sony's making another movie right now called Madam Web, and they have some very interesting actresses in there. The lead 3 are Dakota Johnson, of course made famous by 50 Shades, Emma Roberts, and Sydney Sweeney, made famous by Euphoria, The White Lotus, and then also a Twitter controversy just a few weeks ago. Now, if I were Dakota Johnson or Emma Roberts, I'd be pretty upset that I didn't get Barbarella. Barbarella's tough. I think Barbarella is an incredible opportunity, and I think Sydney Sweeney could not be a better choice. But I don't really know if it's going to work out because the first Barbarella was a horrible failure. So I don't really know if Barbarella would be a really successful film if it were to be made, unless significant changes were made to it. And they could be doing that. All right, so if you're not familiar with Barbarella starred Jane Fonda during the sexy phase of her career. And it came out in 1968. It's a very adult sci-fi film. It had a lot of nudity in it, for example. But it became kind of like a pop culture icon. Even though people didn't go to see the movie, they still liked the look. And you can see it mimicked in many other things, like including, for instance, even the fembots, like in Austin Powers. It's a very specific look. And she had some really cool costumes. Some of them were a little more inappropriate than others, so I couldn't use them here. But I think that one's the most iconic. It's my favorite of the Barbarella costumes. But yes, there's some weird stuff in there. Some of your comments are even being censored because YouTube feels that they're not appropriate because you're talking about Barbarella. So this even came out a little bit before Star Wars. It was ahead of its time. I don't know about that because, Star Wars is family friendly. Barbarella most definitely was not. But as I said, even if many people didn't see Barbarella, they still know what Barbarella is. The brand does have, I think, name recognition, even though no one's ever really done anything with it. People still, though, how many of you have heard of Barbarella before it was announced yesterday? I mean, I haven't seen it, but if someone said to me Barbarella, I'd be like, I know what you're talking about. Okay, so some of you didn't. Right now we look like 50-50 here. That's interesting. I Don't Care Bear says, of course, camp B-movie classic. Oh, I love it. So yes, so I think that Sydney Sweeney, if you were going to pick somebody to be Barbarella, it's interesting. About 10 years ago or so, or maybe, I'm not sure, maybe 10 years, but a couple of years ago, you would have picked Margot Robbie to be Barbarella. So we've been wondering who the new Margot Robbie would be. And a lot of people over the past few years have been compared to Margot Robbie. People thought Jamie King looked like Margot Robbie. Hey, Hal Apena, welcome back. And I think, some people thought Samara Weaving might be the new Margot Robbie. I don't think so. That didn't work out, unfortunately, although I'm a big Samara Weaving fan, but for some reason, she just hasn't clicked yet. Maybe the new Scream movie will do it. She's still in there fighting, though. Good for her. But I think that Sydney Sweeney, I think that's not only great casting, but if I were Margot Robbie, I think Margot Robbie is wise to try to maybe, her career's not going very well. She's not had a box office hit. She should be, I think that, I don't know if she even wants to play this type of cheesecake role anymore, but I think it's pretty clear that Sydney Sweeney is kind of moving into that market. But is there a market? How many people would want to see a Barbarella film? I would be a little bit nervous about this. Now, Sydney Sweeney, in her defense, is also producing. Hey, Blix, I'm glad you were able to make it for the first story. Is that Heartstopper as your image there? So anyway, I think that, at least she has some control over it. Good for Sydney Sweeney that she has some control over the project. And I think that picking the director and the writer are going to be crucial for this to work out. Now, do I think some people will see Barbarella? For sure. Some of you are like, oh yes, I'd see Barbarella, and that's fantastic. But the question is, how many people would see it? You would think that Barbarella, a really sexy sci-fi, especially in today's marketplace, might be able to do really big numbers, and I'm sure that's the goal. And I think that maybe it could. Aeon Flux did not do well. Starring Charlize Theron, for Pete's sake. Neither did Atomic Blonde, by the way, also starring Charlize Theron. And Atomic Blonde, Aeon Flux was not a good movie. Atomic Blonde was a very good movie, still didn't do well. Birds of Prey did not do well. Blonde with Ana de Armas, very risque. Nobody was watching that, really. Kill Bill did pretty well. That's right, Ultraviolet is another one. Huge flop. That's right, Danelle. Kill Bill, that did pretty good, but that's, of course, I think because you had Quentin Tarantino. So that's why I say that the director is crucial here to giving this some cachet and respectability. Then also, I think whoever the male lead is, the male, also speaking of, I was just thinking about this, who else maybe could have gotten this? Lily James, who did a wonderful job as Pamela Anderson. And I was reminded of that because Sebastian Stan, of course, is in that movie I just discussed with you. And, nobody watched Pam and Tommy either, really, which is quite sad because Pam and Tommy was amazing. I think that there's definitely a market here, but it's limited. And I think that's why Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach have done some really interesting things with the Barbie movie. But also, I think the casting of Ryan Gosling as Ken is crucial. So the question is, who will be the male lead here who's actually supposed to be dressed like an angel with giant wings and walking around shirtless? So that's pretty funny. But I also wonder how many changes they'll make. It might be Barbarella in name, concept, and look only, and they might change a significant portion of it otherwise, which to me, I think would be the ideal thing to do. So I think this couldn't be off to a better start, and I think that Sydney Sweeney should go for it. I think this is a really good opportunity for her, and I hope that she's as a talented producer and can maybe make this work. You want it to have wide appeal and you want it to be, that's funny, Lisa, about Harry Styles. That's very funny. But I'm not, hey Diego, I'm glad you made it. But I'm just not sure. Also, as Mr. F said, they would have to change a lot for the movie to be made today. I think it certainly, can you add strong feminism to it to get the female audience to watch? But if you add that, would it negate the male audience wanting to watch? This is it's a very tricky balancing act. Regan, Jane Fonda, that would be a wonderful idea to have her have a cameo. And she would do it. She would totally do it. Jane Fonda's a good sport. So, yeah. So I think that, I don't watch Euphoria either. Youthful Bloom. I'm a fan of Sydney Sweeney's from White Lotus. I thought she did a very good job there. I thought that her Twitter situation was unfortunate, but I could think we can chalk it up to it being difficult to have your family drawn into that, not wanting to comment on your private life. But then why would you tweet pictures of it? If you don't want to talk about your family, don't talk about your family. So, it's an interesting question. Is Sydney Sweeney the new Chris Pratt? That's very possible. But Chris Pratt's movies do still quite well. So she could have a very big audience, and that could be interesting as well, depending on the vibes that she takes with that. That would be fascinating to me. I think Chris Pratt's doing very well. And it would be funny if Euphoria gave us the female Chris Pratt, which would be absolutely hilarious. So funny. That's why everybody was particularly upset about that. Some people were like, why was this a big controversy about her parents? And you're like, well, it's because it's just so directly flies in the face of the people who watched the show and made her a star. So I think it's interesting. Rashad says, who should direct this, Grace? Either a guy like Quentin Tarantino, who's going to give it a lot of comic book cachet, or if you could get a female director, that could work out, who maybe, but I worry if you don't have to get a female director who could make it not Patty Jenkins. You need a female director who could make sure that it was still commercial. That's very difficult to do. Although, how about some of the women directing Game of Thrones? Let's call these people up. I think that would work. Or how about Susanna White, who directed Rogue One today? Not Rogue One. Andor, which was like Rogue One today. There are strong female directors out there, but you have Kate Herron. That's right. I'd love Kate Herron. Kate Herron actually would be an excellent choice because she would give the seriousness that it needs. Not Kat Coiro, Evan, although I appreciate your enthusiasm. I'm nervous about I heard they changed, as some scoopers have already been saying today, that they changed a significant amount about the finale. They really hacked it up. And so I'm nervous that that's how it's going to play tomorrow. Why? It was so good. It would have undone a lot of the bad will that they had so far. And instead, I think it's going to end very true to form as to how the rest of the series ran. Oh well. So anyway, Barbarella. I think it could be a really good idea. I think it could be really, really good. But it's tricky. But it's very, very tricky to pull off. All right, that's the first story of the day. Hold on. Good for Sydney Sweeney, though. It would be, I really kind of like the idea. I just thought of this while I was talking to you, that she would be the female Chris Pratt. That would be fascinating to have a female version of that. And Chris Pratt, as I said, is still doing quite well. So that would be fascinating. Although I think he overstepped with Mario. It would be funny if Mario is what undid him. All right, so second story of the day. Boop. All right, so Warner Brothers. Leo says, Grace, how much longer until Zaslav is canned? He'll never get canned. Because here's the thing, Zaslav is a very, very successful businessman in Hollywood. But he's, this is what's interesting. Kevin Feige embraces being a household name. But for decades, the business was... For a very long time, unless you watched my channel, very few people knew who the executives were in these leadership positions. But franchises like Marvel, DC, and Star Wars have changed that. Blair, that's a good call on Promising Young Woman. I think that's a great choice, actually. That was Emerald Fennell, who was supposed to do Zatanna. That's right, Blair. I agree with you. Should totally do Barbarella. That's brilliant. All right, so back to Warner Brothers. So Iger Bob, the head of Disney is always a household name for a different reason. Michael Eisner was a household name, and that's because Disney goes into your living room. And so everybody tries to be the new Walt, whoever takes over as the head of that company. So that's but it's always usually very positive. It's like, oh, look, Mickey's hanging out next to him. He's sitting down reading a storybook wearing a sweater. That's the way it used to go. Executives can control their own image, and people weren't discussing whether or not they made good business decisions. And so I think David Zaslav has been he's been caught off guard a little bit by the fact that that's now the arena he finds himself in. David Zaslav before was used to work at NBC Universal back in the day when none of this stuff was ever discussed. And then he went on to Discovery where, who's talking about the Discovery executives. And now that he runs Warner Brothers, he's not having a good time because people are not, it's weird. Again, that one call, for 24 hours, everyone was like, see, Grace, he's so nice. And I was like, look at what he does, not what he says. And now everybody is Zaslav's become like a boogeyman or a swear word. I wouldn't say boogeyman because the repercussions of what he's doing are very real. But he'll never be fired. Just like, I don't know. Let's see if Bob Chapek, I think the new price raises over at Disney theme parks is really a step too far. And the stock continues to fall. These executives are in good shape as long as they make the shareholders money. David Zaslav has been making, thanks, Sean. That's so nice of you. That's an interesting picture, or avatar you have there. Hey, Carter. So David Zaslav has been, Bob Chapek, for the most part, has kept the shareholders very happy, but they're not happy anymore. I just saw something come in here, and I don't see where that came in. I just want to thank that person. Where is that? Oh, yes, Blix. That was earlier. That was very nice of you, Blix. Okay, so anyway. All right. So as long as the shareholders are happy, these executives stay where they're supposed to be. That's why Chapek got renewed. And also he's been making a lot of money through the theme parks. And I guess that's why he's trying to squeeze them even more money out of them. But as for David Zaslav, as we've been discussing, he has a very strict directive right now, and that's to get Warner Brothers ready to sell. And just like AT&T was saddled with horrible debt when they took over the company, Warner Brothers Discovery finds himself in the same position. So they are looking to cut their debt position so that they are a more attractive purchase. So that's what he's doing. He does not care about the future of Warner Brothers Discovery. He only cares about a future sale of Warner Brothers. That's what he's doing. And so he had another round of layoffs this week. They're continuing. They're happening more today with the streaming marketing division. And people expected some firings because it's just like when Disney Fox merged. You have overlap. But this goes beyond overlap. This goes to gutting, to really streamline these the functionality of Warner Brothers so that it runs for as little money as possible. This isn't, we don't want to pay two people to do the same job. This is how few people can we pay? How low can we get the operating budget and have Warner Brothers still be functional so that we can sell it? That's kind of what they're doing. Like the outside still looks nice and shiny and sparkly, but inside they're stripping out all the parts. So they cut off 26% of the workforce in several areas yesterday. TV and animation is where they focused, and it was a combination of firing people, but also not filling positions that needed to be filled. And there's quite a number that had not been filled. So I guess that they were saying they were going to wait till maybe the things were more settled. And it's funny because, Warner Brothers, before it started becoming, passed around, it was really, really known for being a very lavish company that treated all of its employees quite well and would spend money to, throw great parties and great travel expenses. And, now it's like a very different situation. But TV stripped away a lot of its staff. But the most shocking thing, Denzel is saying, not animation, animation continues to have a huge target. Cartoon Network was basically destroyed and folded into Warner Brothers Animation proper. The Cartoon Network brand still exists, but it's now something for Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers Animation now is a single entity, and they have 3 bins they can toss stuff into, basically. Whelm says, why do these companies purchase other companies with massive debt? They can't be unaware of the debt before purchasing. Is Zaslav having buyer's remorse? I think that from the very beginning, the way Hollywood talks about this is that AT&T always envisioned a sale to Universal. AT&T always felt that this would be the case. I don't know why they didn't sell directly to Universal. Maybe they couldn't find anyone to do it. Maybe Universal, it was such bad shape, Universal wouldn't take it. Maybe David Zaslav behind the scenes said, I can get it to shape where they will purchase it. Because remember, AT&T is still a big shareholder in Warner Brothers Discovery, and they would get a considerable amount of money if the sale were to go through. And they're still saddling some of the financial pain from the acquisition of Warner Brothers in the first place. Warner Brothers Discovery alleviated that pain. They did not make it totally go away. But I think David Zaslav flirted with the idea of running Warner Brothers himself. He's always wanted to be one of the main Hollywood figures, but I think he's quickly decided it is not for him. So that's kind of what happened there. But yes, animation is in very bad shape, and I think people are very concerned, not so much about Warner Brothers continuing to be in the animation business, but being as edgy and as outreaching as they were before. Warner Brothers, made a lot of the animation that, for instance, Disney would not. But unlike, smaller animation studios, they had the ability to get edgy animation out there. So Leo says the Velma show does not look good. I don't know. I think it looks very niche, but I do think that I could see a fan base rallying around it. It looks very Harley Quinn to me, to the point that it almost seems to me, as we discussed the other day, a little bit of a Harley Quinn ripoff. Although, as we said, if they had a crossover between the two shows, that would be pretty cool. So Oscar says, what do you think this means for DC Comics? Well, I gotta tell you, they don't pay a lot of money in the comic book area, so they're not gonna cut a lot of costs over there. And I think it's probably pretty stripped down as it is, because they already have a bunch of firings there, as you know. So I think I think nobody's safe. I think they're gonna strip it down as lean as they possibly can. They're gonna cut Warner Brothers Discovery down to the bone. But then also something else that they did, they continue to not only target animation, but unfortunately representation at the studio. And people were pretty shocked and appalled yesterday that Stage 13 was shut down, which was the production company that would produce the work, like shorts, of up-and-coming talent that Warner Brothers was thinking of discovering behind the scenes, writers and directors and stuff like that. But it was usually talent of color or LGBT talent. Now that division has been shut down. Now, I can understand that maybe you don't want to inherit that division, but the fact that they didn't replace it with another division, they still have a diversity and inclusion division at Warner Brothers Discovery, but how is it going to operate? It's like, they're like, oh yeah, there's a division of that. And they're like, okay, but what are they going to do? And they're like, come back later. So I think that, not only is it really shocking and very aggressive from a business standpoint, but I think societally, or I guess a better way to say it is from a PR perspective, it's pretty brutal as well. So we'll see. We'll see. I mean, they have till 2024 that they can sell this. So they have to somehow manage to operate for like a little over, over almost 2 years. That's a long time to have to try to operate, but they're doing it. Rahul says, Grace, can Zaslav sell individual IP of Warner Brothers to others like DC? No, he could. Well, he could, but he will not, because it would greatly undervalue the purchase of the whole enchilada, which is what he wants to sell. He did say, though, he would rent out IP. And I think that's as close as you're going to get. He's more than happy to rent out IP. And all IP. There's no IP too great. By Blix, no IP too great that he won't rent it to you. But he won't sell it, because he wants to sell Warner Brothers as a whole. And so he's just not going to do that. To be honest with you, Universal wants those brands so they can put them into their empire. So, nobody wants to buy Warner Brothers infrastructure. They want to buy other elements of Warner Brothers. That's why, NBC Universal Comcast is huge itself. It's already huge. It doesn't need just Warner Brothers parts, beyond the IP. The IP, I think, is what's truly very valuable to them. Imagine getting all those things, Warner Brothers games, Harry Potter, DC, etc. That's incredible. That's incredible. When it's an IP war right now, Universal definitely could use that. Does anyone have any questions specifically about the Warner Brothers situation before we get to the next story? Blair Wraith says Warner Brothers is basically House Targaryen at this point. That's pretty funny. Well, I don't know. If they succeed, they are. If not, they're a Hightower. That's right, Whelmed. If he sold off the parts, nobody would buy it. That's right, Wesley. Dune also could become a big franchise. Youthful Bloom says if they sell it, how soon will we see it in the Universal parks? Ooh, that could take a long time. Jander says, what are IPs? IPs are basically brands. Intellectual properties is, I believe, what it's short for. I think that it would take time, unless they are secretly working on things behind the scenes right now. But I think it could take, I don't know, Epic Universe is getting ready to open, and I think they would maybe want to put something in there. But it could take maybe about 5 years to get things in quickly. Because, imagine how long, go and look how long it took to build Harry Potter Land, and that's how long it would take to build Game of Thrones Land. Oh, I would love it so much. I think that they would really be they're able to compete with Disney now because they're, some people feel they're treating their customers better. But I think in terms of appeal, I think that if there was like a DC land at these parks, it would be hard to compete with them. Evan says, Zaslav cutting Cartoon Network gave me depression. Yeah, it gave a lot of people depression. It was tough. It was really tough. I think animation is a difficult enough business as it is. Noah says, do these layoffs look good to the shareholders? What's going on with the stock side of this? It looks great to the shareholders as long as it doesn't, and the price is not doing well. But and that's why they're being sued, of course, by that one group in Illinois. But here's the thing. You just got to ride this out if you're a shareholder. And when Warner Brothers Universal purchases it, you too will make tons of money. And that's why for in large part, they're being backed by their shareholders. Hey, Comic Boom. I mean, that's what they're holding out for a big payday. All right, so that's the second story of the day. Bye, Connie. All right. Boom, baby. So I watched Andor today, and sure enough, it finally gave me what I wanted out of the show, and it was spectacular. I absolutely loved Andor today. If you have not been watching Andor, I highly recommend that you jump back in and watch this episode. You have to watch all of the episodes to get to this episode? I don't think you do. I would watch the previous episode, so you're not too lost, but I think you could actually just watch 6, and you would be fine. Don't worry, I'm not going to spoil this episode. I'm just going to talk about the show and, the basic idea. There's no spoilers. Don't worry. If you haven't seen Andor episode 6, I'm not going to spoil it. I think that the pacing continues to be way off on this show. As I said when I reviewed episodes 1 through 3, that really should have been one episode. I think, Bruce Wayne is like, you definitely need to watch all 6 of the episodes. Yeah, I mean, ideally. But I mean, it's a little boring. It's going to be a little tough for you to sit through all 6, I think, to some degree. However, I think you will enjoy 6 more if you have the payoff. Hey, Hector. Now, I think that episodes 1 through 3 should have been one single episode, but like an hour episode, or it should have been maybe 2 at most. Maybe 2 45-minute episodes at most. Which it kind of was, actually. But the pacing on episodes 1 through 3 was really difficult. And I think that's one of the reasons a number of people stopped watching the show. Now, as for this part, some people say, Tiff Lockhart says, should I watch, if you have never seen Rogue One, yes, I would. I think you'll enjoy the show more if you understand what it can be. Thanks, Bruce Wayne. I appreciate that we're on the same page there. Hey, Christopher. Hey, Zach. But I think that some people say they feel the show is going in 3-episode arcs, which I actually think is probably true. But then they should have released it 3 episodes at a time, and I think people would be more forgiving. But I think that today's episode really should have been episode 3 or 4 or even 5. I think to have this good an episode all the way till 6 is ridiculous. I mean, this was a whole episode of action. This was a whole Heather says, if I were Ryan Reynolds in Disney, then I would go shopping if Zaslav will rent IP. I don't know what Ryan Reynolds would want to purchase, and I think Disney has too much IP as it is. But anyway, back to Andor. This was like a whole action episode. They've been building towards a heist for several episodes now, and they finally did it. And it was glorious. It was just what I wanted to see out of Cassian Andor and as a prequel to Rogue One. I gasped several times, although I did gasp during the first few episodes too with the action sequences. This show gives good action and it has very high stakes. People die in Andor, and I appreciate that. I do like that more adult ending for the show. And I really appreciate the difficult decisions that Cassian Andor has to keep making. And also I love the fact that he always makes the right one. So often when you watch a show or a movie, you're screaming at your screen being like, how could you be so stupid? That's clearly, and also sometimes the hero can't make the decision that they need to. But Cassian Andor has to do something here. And it's really scary because I think that if he didn't do what he did, he would have been killed eventually. And so and Diego Luna is doing a fantastic job. You can feel his heart racing through the screen, even though he keeps it calm and cool on the surface. But it's just beneath the surface. And I think that was just phenomenal. I mean, I just thought he was great. I thought it was really, really good. And Susanna White directed today's episode, a woman director. She did a phenomenal job. Hey, Eric. Welcome. She directed several episodes of Trust, for the FX show about the Getty kidnapping, and she's done some Billions. But I just thought it was wonderful. Awards nominations? I don't think yet. Let's see. I think, Marco, that Tony Gilroy definitely understands how to make Star Wars cinematic. I only wish that someone had talked to him about pacing. I have to say, now that I've seen this episode, I feel that that's the show's only one flaw, but it's, I think, perhaps a fatal flaw, and that's that the pacing is so bad. It does remind me a little bit of The Bad Batch, which I enjoyed much more as a binge. The way I watched Bad Batch is I would wait a couple of weeks and then I'd catch up and I would watch a couple episodes in a row. And I much more enjoyed it that way. And I think that Andor, you should wait. I watch it every week because I'm like, maybe something really amazing will happen this week. But even as good as today's episode was, you can see no one's really talking about it. Andor trended a little bit, but then it fell out of the top 10. And I think people are going to say to each other, you really should watch this. This was great. I wish that, I think that if Andor had been like this throughout all of the episodes, it would have been a new House of the Dragon. It would have been a show that I could have broken down. I can break down a show that doesn't have Easter eggs if it's really good and thrilling. If a show, I'll tell you the bottom. You know what needs to have a show for me to be able to break it down? Large interest. And Andor, unfortunately, simply does not have that. I tried breaking it down to see if there was an audience, and there was not. Maybe if Andor gets phenomenal, season 2 might be kind of the show that I could break down. But right now, it's just not that show, which is too bad. Juan says, will you cover the full season at the end? Maybe I will because I'm watching it. But I got to tell you, I reviewed Bad Batch at the end of the season, and it was really not worth my time. I felt bad about it. But maybe I will. Hey, Craig, because I thought that today was just such phenomenal storytelling. So let's talk a little bit about the heist. I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but I do want to share my thoughts on it because it was a very different type of heist story that I'd never seen before. And that's that it was extremely realistic. I was on the edge of my seat the entire episode because, boy, even though this was an extremely well-planned heist, constantly they were in danger of things going wrong. And, usually when you see a heist in a movie or TV show, if you plan it correctly, it goes by really great, and you're really never in that much danger. It's a little bit like being in a panic room. You're like, every time a new level of the heist, because they didn't tell us what the plans were. That's also something that's very different from other heist shows. Usually on a heist show or a movie, like think about Ocean's 11. They walk you through the whole thing, and then the surprises come in where there are mistakes. But here, the surprises came not only where things went wrong, but what the plan was. And it was a great plan. But there were so many moving parts, and there were way too many people at that base. I was like, this is ridiculous. There are so many people here. This is very dangerous. And I respected that because I think this is most likely what actually pulling off a heist is like in real life. That it's very dangerous. There is no way. You can maybe, I guess, to some degree decrease the danger or, increase your odds of success. But there's always going to be an element of danger and things going poorly because you're doing something that is dangerous and it puts you in a disadvantage. And I thought it was really, really cool. I thought it was excellent. It's really, really strong. It was, I would say, once again, perfect Star Wars. This is what I wanted out of Andor. This is what I was hoping for Andor. And I wish they had, since this is a little bit like, since they don't leave you with anything to think about, like other Easter egg shows, I wish that like House of the Dragon, there was next week on Andor. When I finished this episode, I was like, okay, where's the preview for next week? And then I was like, oh, Disney Plus doesn't do previews for next week. You're killing me. I really wanted to see what would happen next week. I'm like, give me a clue. What are we going to do, guys? But yeah, it was great. It was really, really strong. And again, if this show was like this every week, it would be a much bigger hit, which is unfortunate. And someone might say, well, let Tony Gilroy. And I'd say that's a mistake. Don't let Tony Gilroy, because you're letting him rob himself of having a big hit. Writer Boy says, I just saw you were live. Great to see you. Got to do a watch back after. Quick question. Oh, that's very nice of you. Any advice for comic book writers such as myself? How do you stay motivated when your creativity clouds your mind? Oh, that's interesting, Writer Boy. Well, I don't know very much about what kind of comic book writing you do. Are you already established in the industry or are you trying to break in? I guess my advice would be, first of all, don't write for characters you don't have the rights to. That's just wasting your time and it's going to frustrate you. Write original stuff or write for comics that accepts new writers. And unfortunately, as I was saying yesterday, you got to make friends with people who hire comic book writers because that's the only way you're going to get hired. There are no agents who can get you in the door, which is unfortunate. But what you should do to motivate yourself is read the material that you're writing. Also, I like when I've done writing, I listen to soundtrack music because it has no words. film scores because there are no words to distract me and put thoughts in my head, but the emotions are really great. So read comics. And I think if you read some good comics, you can even go back and revisit some of the comics that are your favorites. And you'll be like, this is so great. It gives me an idea for what I want to do. And then listen to some music that's and make sure you pick a score that fits the material you're writing. And that should inspire you. And then, just take a break from it. And I always think it's important to blue sky. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the term blue sky. Blue sky is like it comes from I believe it comes from the idea of looking up at the blue sky and just kind of like taking in life. If you're in any creative endeavor, even for me making these YouTube videos, I need to blue sky. Like I've been blue skying the past few days because I know that the next 48 hours are going to be insanity of me making videos. It's just going to be absolutely nuts. So I'm like, yep, I'm going to be working like all day and night. So let me blue sky now and re-energize myself. So go out, go for a walk, do things that you love, have things that just allow you to relax. And I think once you get to a really good place and you're not stressed out, an idea will come to you. So I hope that's helpful. I hope you're not back at work already. Juan says, so episode 6 once again was good. So maybe the second episode, episode 12 will be good too. I hope that they pick up a little bit faster on the pace now. Hey, Too Much. Max says, hey, Grace, can you confirm that the final Invisible Woman casting is down to you and Amanda Seyfried? That's very sweet of you. I've never heard any Invisible Woman casting rumors. I've only heard about Reed. But I would love Amanda Seyfried to get the role. But that's very nice of you. All right, so those are the three. On that note, let's get to the Ask Me Anything portion of the show. All right, so it's 4:26. You can ask me anything you want until 4:36. Yeah, K2SO better show up, Juan. I think he's going to be in episode 12. Rahul says, that's exactly what we discussed in my writing class today. What a coincidence. Oh, that's hilarious, Rahul. Oh, that's great. I'm glad we're on the same page, and also you can back me up. Lloyd says, Grace, your thoughts, please, on that the Rings of Power Season 2 could be years away. Years away? I bet you they secretly never make it. I think that's the beginning of the excuse to not make it. I mean, that's just my guess. Let's see. I think they're like, let's just go. Let's see if we can sell this baby back to NBC. I'd sit on those rights until NBC Universal buys Warner Brothers and then say, would you like to buy back these TV rights from me? Please? Fatin says, what kind of Star Wars story should they tell next? That's interesting. Part of me feels that maybe Tony Gilroy should have made a movie when I was watching this today. I would like another Rogue One. I'd like another adult Star Wars movie. That's what I'd like. And I do not want any Skywalkers involved. I'd really like to move on from the Skywalker story. Because they just ground it into dirt. Sidhu says, thoughts on Mosquito Coast 2 trailer. I did watch it. One of you told me it was up this morning. I didn't even see it. And I'm like, oh, yeah. So I was very excited about that. I think it looks very good. It's funny. I rewatched, as you know, Iron Man 2 the other day, and Justin Theroux was the screenwriter on that. So it's funny to think that that's what he was doing back then, and now he's starring in a little show called Mosquito Coast on Apple TV that not nearly enough people watch. It's like Andor. It's brilliant. I love it. It's actually a much better show than Andor because it has better pacing. But it's very similar to Andor, and nobody talks about that show either. Michael says, Rings of Power Season 2 is already filming. Then there's no reason that it should take years to come in. Unless, are they going to cut their losses? Let's see here. Too Much says, Grace, do you think Aja Ventress will be adapted into live-action Star Wars? I think probably at some point. I haven't heard anything specifically recently, but I think all the Filoni characters are coming. It's just a matter of time. Rahul says, if someone had venture into Star Wars, where would they start? Oh, you got to start with George Lucas. I would say you got to start with George Lucas's original trilogy. I don't know if you need to watch the prequels. I tried to rewatch the prequels. They are bad. But I would definitely watch Filoni's animation. Dancing Dog 60 says, Grace, I think Black Adam can bring in a diverse audience due to The Rock. What do you think? Oh, I think for sure it can bring in a diverse audience. I'm very curious to see how it does. Bo Abdullah, the social media embargo lifts tonight at 9 p.m. Bo Abdullah says, hi, Grace, I watched She-Hulk with my daughter and it was adult-oriented to say the least. Do you think MCU is trying to be more adult? No, I think that did not probably occur to them, quite frankly. I think that's a misfire on the part of the people making that show. But I think, I think they have to be careful. You don't want parents to feel they can't just let children watch your stuff if you're Disney. Tiff Lockhart says, what DC film would you have a House of the Dragon writer be on? Batman. Pretty Batman-y, right? Always Batman. Batman! I got to see what they're thinking of doing. Maybe, like a big fight movie they could do a very good job on. Charlie the Lana Stan says, do you think the Obi-Wan series ruined the prequel's return? They said they wanted to, Ewan McGregor said he wanted to make more Obi-Wan. I think Star Wars is still not up and at 'em like it used to be, but I still think they're in pretty good shape. Just because no one's talking about Andor, I don't think doesn't mean Andor hurts the franchise. It's just, a very expensive animated series, basically, in my opinion. But I still think that the Acolyte and the Ahsoka show, I think those are going to be big. And Mando Season 3, I think that stuff will be big. I did not watch Bad Sisters on Apple TV, Jorge, but thank you for the suggestion. Max says, would it change for Black Panther 2 be that a young Storm is teased and she's T'Challa's son's love interest in the future? That's too young for Storm. Or do you think they'll abandon the romance storyline due to Chadwick's tragic passing? I don't know. I don't know. That's a hard call. It's too, I got to tell you, because of what they're changing, with She-Hulk, the She-Hulk finale tomorrow, I'm starting to feel that it's very difficult to cover Marvel spoilers and scoops because they're changing so much at this point that these things are changed, as the visual effects people have told you, beyond the last minute. So I can give you a kind of a big picture idea of where things are headed, but I think we have to keep this in mind from now on, that things are just, and I don't know how good an idea this is. I think it might be some of where the problems are stemming from, is that you can't make these kinds of changes at the last minute and still have something that's a good, strong structure. But yeah, I think that, are all the Hulks still coming in Captain America New World Order? I believe so. Did She-Hulk lose the ability to lead into that movie? Yes, it did, which is a huge mistake. But that's what they're going with, apparently. They still have one big thing that everyone should hopefully be talking about. Whelm says, what if you can remember, it was the moment in which you fell in love with Batman and DC? Batman the Animated Series, I think, really helped me a lot. I also really loved reading Batman Year One. Hey, Bryce. Thank you, Mr. F. Those things were really great. The first comics I ever picked up were Batman and the X-Men. And those things just made a big difference in my life. And I think that's why I like them so much. Chris, I can't tell you what movie Regan, I can't tell you what movie I'm seeing this evening, but I'll tweet about it when I get there. Bryce says, Grace, have you ever thought starting a Letterboxd account? I'd love to follow you on there. Thank you, Bryce, but I feel like I'm like the anti-intellectualism of the Letterboxd. That's funny. Donnell, that's a great question. I don't know where Invincible Season 2 is, but I know they have some Invincible stuff coming up, so they're still working on that, which is great. Mr. F says, thoughts on the Jon Snow show? That's funny to see that written out together. I think he's the most vanilla character in the original series, but I guess there's a reason vanilla is most popular. Mr. F, I love it. You couldn't have said it better. People do love vanilla, and I do think that's an iconic character. And also, I think there's some chance that he could maybe go find Daenerys' body and resurrect her, so I think that's another reason people would be very excited about a Jon Snow show. So I think he is, I think an Arya Stark show would be very interesting. I think that, I would just kind of love to have a show about the Starks. You know how they all went in different directions at the end of the last show? I would love to see what all the different Starks are up to. They conveniently went to different corners of the world. That's what I'd love to see. And none of them are working, so maybe they could get them to do that. Kyle says, I met Henry Cavill at a restaurant I work at. He was very kind and looked super ready to step back into the tights. That's funny. That's great, Kyle. I'm glad he was kind. I think Henry Cavill is always very nice to his fans. Tiff says, will you do research on The Last of Us game before the show? I don't know. Maybe. I know someone who saw it, and they said that it's good, but I don't know. They don't know if it's going to be the new House of the Dragon. It might be somewhere between there and Chernobyl. It might be like another Andor, where people are like, oh, it's good, but there's really nothing to talk. I don't know. When you have zombies with giant mushrooms coming out of their head, that kind of gives you something to talk about. Collector says, I know you don't usually talk about anime, but the new show Chainsaw Man has an intro full of cinema references. Have you gotten a chance to watch it? I've never even heard of it, but I appreciate you telling me about it. Where does it air? Sidhu says, how do you stay positive when you've been working so hard at something, but it feels like you're not getting anywhere? I'm feeling pretty discouraged. Well, Sidhu, it's hard for me to give you advice when I don't know what you're working on or why it's not going anywhere. I do think that at a certain point, you have to try and figure out why things aren't moving forward. There's one of my favorite sayings it's actually The Men Who Stare at Goats, which is an awful George Clooney movie, but it has a brilliant line in it. And it talks about the fact that if you feel like you're a salmon constantly swimming upstream, you're in the wrong stream. And when you get in the right stream, things will automatically just start to go a lot better. You'll be able to go with the flow. So I'm not saying, and by the way, that doesn't mean you have to totally abandon what you're doing, but maybe something that you're doing, the way you're going about it is wrong. Maybe you should do something that's adjacent to it. So I think one of the most important qualities you can have in life is to be honest with yourself. Not to the point that it's super, you have to also balance that out with being positive and optimistic. Tomorrow is another day. But I think you also don't want to, you owe it to yourself to face hard truths, in my opinion. But I think that, if something really means a lot to you, well, then that's why you're doing it in the first place. But again, Sidhu, it's very hard for me to give you advice because I don't know what you're referring to. Also, it's just hard to give anybody personal advice. It's your life. So it's, difficult. You have to remember, you're the one who has to deal with the consequences. Although I had a film advisor who didn't want to take any responsibility for anyone's careers, so they never would give any of their advisees any advice. And I was like, why am I coming here every week? You won't give me any advice. I'd be like, what class should I take? And he'd be like, what class do you want to take? And I would be like, why am I in here? Noah says, Grace, because of the amount of spoilers you see beforehand, did you know Iron Man was going to die in Endgame? I did not! And that was a simpler time. I think there are some things that I would like to be surprised with, quite frankly. Check Twitter, Warner Brothers Discovery reverse. What decision, Kyle? What are you talking about? I don't see anything. Oh my God, look at all the chats I missed. Hold on. Okay. Dancing Duck says, Misha Green, Blade, please. I haven't heard anything about her being in the running for that. David says, couldn't join yesterday, but heard that Natasha talk. Glad you like her. She's my fave. My pleasure. I can tell from your lovely photo there. Let's see. Regan says, have you seen the trailer for Megan? I did. I thought it was ridiculous. I was like, no wonder it's from the same writer as Malignant, who, by the way, came from the diversity program over at Warner Brothers. They just ended. Zach West says, any news on the last Airbender show from Netflix? They've been casting it. I don't know where it is, but they've been working on it. Tyler Nakata says, Hilary Duff should be offered that Lizzie McGuire got scrapped when she should be offended when She-Hulk is basically the show she wanted to make. That's true. She should say something about it, but I guess she wants to try and maybe get hired again by Disney. Bo Abdullah, I was going to watch Halloween Ends tonight, but their screening is unfortunately at the exact same time as someone else's screening. Let's see here. It's a Hollywood Reporter. Oh, they reinstated the diversity program. Good call. They're like, uh-oh. Amy says, can Universal use DC while they have Marvel in their park? Six Flags has DC. Can Universal Parks give Disney Marvel back and reskin DC? I would not want to do that. It seems a mess in Orlando. I think they can easily probably buy Six Flags out of that deal or just be like, whatever. I think that I would not want to see the Marvel rides reskinned. I would rather just tear them down, quite frankly. I don't know if they'll do that because everybody's so cheap these days. But those Marvel rides have been around for so long and are so well known, everybody will just know they've been reskinned. But it's ridiculous to have those. And I think, Disney probably would be happy. They're like, yes, give us back so we can do more Marvel in Orlando. and you guys can do a bunch of DC. Thank you, Haunted Autumn. That's really kind of you. Boop right back to you. Thanks, P. Frost One. That's very kind of you. That's right, Juan. The Spider-Man ride at Universal Orlando is pretty fantastic. Christopher Earl says, do you think Andor 3 episode releases per... If you think Andor 3 episode releases per week should have been the way they went if they are going to structure the show that way? Yes, as I said earlier, for sure. Definitely that's what they should have done. Michael, next for BT is Movie Math merch, which I actually have to do something about after this. I owe some stuff to the people I'm working with. Evan says, Grace, would you ever consider playing The Last of Us Part 1 before covering the show when it drops? I don't know if I have time to play a video game, but I appreciate you asking me. Writer Boy says, oh, you're still here. Yay. Writer Boy says, someone mentioned Storm earlier and I had a question. How would you like to see her powers utilized in the MCU? Should she appear in Black Panther 2 or appear later? I would love to see her. Hey, Jamie, I would love to see her teased. I think that would be just wonderful. Oh, boy. Oh, thanks, Jerry. I'm way over the time. All right, let me do some shout-outs. Sander, I don't know if they're closing in on the Mr. Fantastic casting, but I know they have their shortlist. And it's a very good shortlist. Thank you, Collector N. I appreciate it. All right, so just give me some ideas of what you guys are up to. So I can just say hi. And then I must go. Tiff says, on a blue sky walk at the moment in sunny Colorado. Tiff, I love it. Millie Jo says, watching Beauty and the Beast in honor of Angela Lansbury. Oh, that's very sweet. Lisa says, at work again in Wisconsin. Enjoy your movie. Thank you. Hey, Jacob in Honolulu. I hope you're having a great day at the office. Jander just got a dog. Oh, wow. Let's see here. Charlie the Lana Stan says, how's your day? It's been relaxing. I'm ready for the hardcore next 48 hours. Thank you, Charlie. Colin Boom says, where'd that go? Where'd it go? I am rejoicing and finally becoming a member on your channel. Hurrah! Hooray! Huzzah! Lloyd Lester says, at work now, clocking out in 20 minutes and ready for a chilled evening here in Virginia. Excellent. Sidhu says, folding paper cranes at work before going to my Streetcar Named Desire rehearsal. Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, that's great. I hope your show is a hit. Break a leg. That's what you're supposed to wish to people there. Bye, Tiff. Zach says, playing Overwatch and having dinner in the UK. Excellent. It's Colton Lee says, I'm rewatching The White Lotus, getting ready for season 2. Yeah, I saw the season 2 trailer. It has such a different vibe, but I'm definitely going to watch. Collector N says, I'm getting ready to go to work where I will rewatch Chainsaw Man episode 1 with friends. That's awesome. Marco says, shamelessly eating ice cream to mentally shield myself from the stress of upcoming exams. Oh, yep, that's a different way to blue sky. Elon says, unwinding in Israel, happy Jewish holidays. Oh, that's wonderful, Elon. Let's see here. Matt says, coming at you from Michigan, eating some green peppers. Max is struggling to exercise in my dorm at Wesleyan. Oh, what a great school. Let's see here. Hal says, sitting on a bench after a run, feeding some ducks. Oh, I love ducks. My mother had a pet duck when she was a baby. Like a toddler. Youthful Bloom says, finishing a script today for a short film festival. Yes, for sure. Break a leg. That's the thing to do. Break a leg. I hope your script does well. That's wonderful. Good for you. You can't win a contest if you don't enter it. Rashad says, in bed before work, enjoying this live stream. I'm going to catch up on the stream from yesterday. Oh, that was a long one. Enjoy. Thomas says, just let my cat out. Writer Boy says, still here hanging out, going over my script and enjoying spending time with all. And Grace, I should be on TikTok. I don't know. It's hard to be on more than one platform. Ooh, Regan, seeing The Woman King this evening. You're going to love it. Anthony says, hey, I have a job interview tomorrow as a mental health worker, alcoholism specialist, as I'm recovering alcoholic with mental issues. Love you. That's great, Anthony. So you're going to help people who are similar to the problems that you've managed to overcome. That's great. You're paying it forward. Jennifer Escalona says, baking at home, took the day off. Oh, that sounds nice. And Evan says, getting ready to go to bed here in Kenya. Oh, it's so nice to talk to you across the globe. That's so cool. And Jamie Johnson says, just got back from a church group. So glad, though, I could make the live stream. Oh, that's wonderful. Love from the UK. Love right back at you, Jamie. I'm really glad. I think that, religious institutions used to be about community rather than some of the seeds of discord they seem to be sowing today. And sometimes when I see old movies and stuff, I do miss the days when that, and so Jamie, it seems nice to me that maybe that's still the case for your community. Hey, Mika. Always nice to see you. All right, well, on that kind of slightly depressing note. Oh, Joshua, congrats on 5 years sober. Good for you. Marco says, Grace, what was the name of your pet goldfish? Neptune. That was the fish that lasted the longest. Also, one of my favorites was Albert Finney. My mother named that one. I can't take credit for that. That was great. Amy says, reheating spaghetti, going to watch the new Hellraiser. Oh, I hope you enjoy it. Oh, my pleasure, Chen. Okay, bye, everybody. Bye. Bye-bye. See you soon. Lots of videos tomorrow and Friday. Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.